Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, this is like the overview, kind of like the last little stretch of my World of the Dice Reading Vlog series. Part 3 was the Book of the Month part, and that part is what I'm kind of wrapping up right now with these 3 books, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then I also have this book to read, and because I'm borrowing it from my friend, and so I'm not. So yeah, that's like the update. Again, I'll talk about this in a little bit. But the purpose of this video is that just to kind of like overview, read these books, especially the 3 Book of the Month ones, because those are like overdraft. That's not the right word. Excuse me. Those are like a spillover. Whatever the word is, I can't think of it. From the previous video, because that was already like an hour and 10 minutes, now 15 minutes. So, but the purpose of this video specifically isn't really to give updates for the actual reading. Like, I know I have like reading vlog in the title and the thumbnail, but it's not like necessarily like a traditional reading vlog video. In the sense that, like I said, in the sense that I'm like giving updates and I'm actively reading during the reading vlog, or when I say the reading vlog is, like I'm not actively reading like you would in a traditional reading vlog. This for me was like kind of like an overview of how I felt this reading vlog went, because it is a little bit different to previous reading vlogs. So I want to go over, I do have something on my iPad that we'll talk about in a little bit, but to go over the 3 books that I have to read, the 4 books that I have to read, one of which I'm currently reading. I'm currently reading 1, 2, 3 books, I think. 3 books in total. The first book that I'm going to talk about right now is Pride and Premeditation by Tirzah Price, and it's a Jane Austen murder mystery. I might actually get this for myself. I just borrowed it from my friend. Pride and Prejudice gets a murder mystery makeover in this new series based on Jane Austen's most beloved books. 17-year-old aspiring law student Lizzie Bennet and young fledgling lawyer Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy go head-to-head in a murder case that has shocked London high society. But as the case and her feelings for Darcy become more complicated, Lizzie discovers that her dream career could make her happy, but it also might get her killed. So that's what this is about. It sounds really interesting. I do like the Jane Austen books, or like from the ones that I've read and remember. I do like them. I'm not a huge classics person, because like a lot of the classics fell under like a lot of like the traditional, what we think of as classics books tend to be more lit fic, with like hints. It tends to be like lit fic romance or lit fic gothic, like if you think of, I'm not blanking on what it is, Wuthering Heights. Like that's definitely like a gothic, lit fic gothic. It's not a romance, you guys. Wuthering Heights is not a romance, and the movie should not have been made the way it was. And I liked Jacob Elordi in Frankenstein. I liked him in that. But not Frankenstein. Wuthering Heights is not it. And a white man, as talented as Jacob Elordi is, I've only seen him in Frankenstein, so I'm not sure what else he's done, like how else his range expands or goes over like, different stuff. But I liked him in Frankenstein. But it's like a white man, no matter how talented, should not have been cast as Heathcliff, who... Okay. Slight tangent. He should not have been cast as Heathcliff. A white actor should not have been cast as Heathcliff. Because the fact that he was Romani, the fact that he was of color, Heathcliff was integral to why he was outcast by the family. it's integral to his story and who he becomes. And that whole family dynamic and the romantic dynamics, all of those were toxic as fuck. So it's not, and it's like, there is like the dark romance genre, which I like the dark romance, because it's most of the time with dark romance, it's, they're both adults and they act like adults. And you get more of an in-depth view into the relationship, and like, again, they're adults, so they act like adults. And even if they have like a slight miscommunication, they talk about it. They don't let the miscommunication fester. So it's like that. I prefer dark romance over the regular romance trope. Nothing against the regular romance trope. Like, I'm a full advocate for supporting the romance genre. It's just most romance books that are not dark romance don't work for me. That slight tangent aside, like, Wuthering Heights is so far from being a romance. It is gothic, and there are romance subplots, but it's Wuthering Heights. It isn't even a dark romance. It is gothic. Like, there are romance plots, but just because something has a romance plot or subplot does not necessarily make it a romance. Romances, even dark romance, the requirement is that they have an, sorry, I had to go check something, but romance, the genre, it's like an unspoken rule that for it to be romance, it has to have a happily ever after, an HEA, or a HFN, a happy for now. And you don't get that with Wuthering Heights. And a lot of people say, like, oh, you don't actually do happily ever after or happy for now for romance. It's like, yes, you do. That's the point of romance, is that at the end of the story, even if there's a third act breakup, there will be a happily ever after or a happy for now. That's like the unspoken rule for romance. Even with dark romance, you get the happily ever after or happy for now. So it's like, Wuthering Heights, you do not get that with any of the storylines. So it does have romantic subplots that are very prominent throughout the story, but it is not a romance. And that's kind of the whole point of the story. And like, the thing is too, is that Heathcliff was a person of color, and then they cast Jacob Elordi. Again, nothing against Jacob Elordi. I really liked how he did Frankenstein's monster Adam. They should not have cast a white person as Heathcliff, first off. And on that kind of note, they have two of the characters who kind of act as antagonists to Kathy and Heathcliff's relationship as people of color, which totally undermines the point of the story. The point of the story was that, like I said, was that Heathcliff was Romani. He was of color, and that's why that family ostracized him. And to take away that part of the story, it's what's equivalent to this is Tiana being a black princess. That is essential. That is integral to Tiana's story. If you make her white, that takes out everything that story says, and it's no longer the same story. If you do not have Tiana black, it's the same argument with Heathcliff being Romani, Heathcliff being of color. If you take that out of his character, then you do not have the same story. And it's like like I was saying, the fact that you have two of the characters who are trying to stand between Heathcliff and Kathy, if you have those two characters, I can't remember specifically which characters they were, but you have them as people of color. I think one of them, the woman, I think she was Asian. I can't remember where exactly, but I remember that she was Asian. And then the man, I think he was like from England, but like his background, I think, was Indian maybe, or in that area, in that surrounding area. So like, you have the two people of color standing between essentially a white couple, and it's like, that was a really bad fucking move. To take away the integral part of Heathcliff's character being Romani and of color, and to make the only two obviously of color characters stand between two white characters. It's like, that is such a bad fucking message. Like, okay, that's a tangent. But anyway, so back to the original points. I do like. I'm not a huge fan of what we traditionally think of as the classics, because a lot of them, like I said, are lit fic. So it's like, it's not my most favorite, most preferred genre, just because a lot of it is lit fic with subplots of romance. And I'm not a big lit fic person. Like, I enjoyed classics, I enjoyed a lot of Jane Eyre's novels. Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, there we go. I enjoyed a lot of their works, it's just because a lot of it was more lit ficky with romance subplot. It wasn't necessarily like my cup of tea. So I think the Jane Austen murder mystery series, would be a good one for me. So I do need to read this. To talk about the other 3 books, this is the one I'm currently reading, What the River Knows by Isabel Ibañez. And I'm currently reading this one. And then also the next book in it, it's a duology, is Where the Library Hides. I'm not going to talk about the second book. I'm not going to give the description for it, just because spoilers, And I haven't read it yet. I read this one though, but I'm rereading it so that I can read this one. But What the River Knows. One second. Okay, I'm back. The living Argentinian Inez Oliveira belongs to the glittering upper society of the 19th century Buenos Aires, and like the rest of the world, the town is steeped in old world magic. Like the rest of the world, the town is steeped in old world magic that's been largely left behind or forgotten. Inez has everything a girl might want, except for the one thing she yearns the most for: her globe-trotting parents, who frequently leave her behind. When she receives word of their tragic deaths, Inez inherits the massive fortune and a mysterious guardian, an archaeologist in partnership with his Egyptian brother-in-law. Yearning for answers, Inez sails to Cairo, bringing her sketch pads and a golden ring her father sent to her for safekeeping before he died. But upon her arrival, the old world magic, tethered to the ring, pulls her down a path where she discovers there is more to her parents' disappearance than what her guardian led her to believe. With her guardian's infuriatingly handsome assistant thwarting her at every turn, Inez must rely on ancient magic to uncover the truth about her parents' disappearance, or risk becoming a pawn in a larger game that will kill her. So the little blurb says, the mummy meets Death on the Nile in this lush, immersive historical fantasy filled with adventure, arrivals to lovers, romance. That's the thing I like with this part. It says rivals to lovers, because in my opinion, to finish the book, arrivals to lovers, romance, and shocking twists and turns. So, like, in my humble opinion, is that most books marketed as enemies to lovers are not true enemies to lovers, because it's like, for me, enemies to lovers has to be high stakes. They may not be trying to kill each other, but they have to have high stakes if their side should fail. And usually, more often than not, it has like medium stakes, which would need be rivals to lovers. But like with this book side, like most books that are marketed as enemies to lovers are at best rivals to lovers, because more often than not, like I said, they don't have like the high stakes that, in my opinion, would be a requirement for enemies to lovers, i.e., meaning like something really bad will happen if they fail or if they don't follow through. Like the loss of a kingdom, or the villain taking over, or like the villain's boss, like the enemy's boss taking over, like something really bad would have to happen. And especially with like the workplace enemies, quote unquote enemies to lovers, those are rivals to lovers, because it's like more often than not, like workplace is somewhat academic, not always academic, but somewhat academic, and at most, like what might happen is one person in the eventual lovers duo, part in the rivals to lovers duo, they just might not get the position, or they have to close down the business, which is like a higher stake, but it's like at the most that's all that's going to happen. Like it's the business isn't going to go to the villain of the story. If there is a villain, it's not going to go to like a big corporate company, and it's like at most it's going to close down, or maybe it will go to a big corporate company, but it would be on that person's terms, you know? So, enemies to lovers, there has to be some sort of high stakes that makes them need to fight, either literally or metaphorically. And more often than not, that does not happen. So, like I said, in my opinion, most books marketed as enemies to lovers are not enemies to lovers. So, yeah. So that's what the river knows. Again, I'm not going to talk about where the library hides, just because we're not going to. So the very last book I'll talk about is Lady Tremaine by Rachel Hochhauser. And this one is basically a Cinderella retelling, but through Lady Tremaine's point of view. I will say that the name chosen for her is very much like, that's an interesting name for her. Not that it's a bad name, it's just like, that's not a name I would have thought. You know? Anyway, twice widowed Lady Etheldreda Verity Isilda Tremaine Bromley. That's like I think it suits her, but at the same time, it is a very hoity-toity. Is solely responsible for her two children, a priggish stepdaughter, a razor-toned peregrine falcon, and a crumbling manor. Fierce and determined, Ethel clings to the respectability her deceased husband's title affords her, hoping it will secure her daughters a future through marriage. When a royal ball offers the chance to change everything, Ethel risks her pride in pursuit of an invitation for all three of her daughters, only to see her hopes fulfilled by the wrong one. As an engagement to the future king unfolds, Ethel discovers sordid secrets hidden in the depths of the royal family, forcing her to choose between the security she craves and the well-being of the stepmother who has bereft her at every turn. Exhilarating to its core, Lady Tremaine reimagines the myth of the evil stepmother at the heart of the world's most famous fairy tale. It is a battle cry for a mother's love for her daughters and a celebration of women everywhere who make their own fortune. So it's one of those things where, like, I said it before, I think I said it years ago when I did my Cruella live action reaction, which I think it's like one of the first videos I put up. And not every villain needs a backstory, and some villains do not deserve backstories. Cruella is like a prime example. Like, I have issues with that movie. Like, Cruella was one of the people who absolutely did not need a backstory. We do not need to be sympathizing with a person who kills and defers puppies. We don't need a backstory for that. And I think this happened because of the rise in popularity of the morally great villain. And it's speaking to women, and it's speaking to queer women, trans or otherwise. Like, it is speaking to queer women by having someone like Cruella be a morally gray person and maybe an anti-hero of sorts. But that is not a character we need to be giving anti-hero status to or morally gray status to, where it's like, oh, they had a reason. They didn't go about it the right way, but they had a good reason. Like, no. There is no good reason to be doing that to puppies. And it's like, Lady Tremaine, I feel like if you look at like Lady Tremaine, or to a slightly lesser extent, the Evil Queen and Snow White, not the Rachel Zegler one. I think Rachel Zegler is very talented, but not the Rachel Zegler Snow White, because that was a fucking atrocity. So, but I do think there's slightly diverting with the live action Snow White. There's a video I saw on TikTok. I can't remember who it was from, but they were saying how the fact that Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot were saying those things about the movie, yes, that might have been partly their own opinions, but it was also partly echoing, it was like 50-50. 50% their own actual opinions about the story, and 50% echoing what the team behind the live action Snow White actually thought about the movie. And it's just like, that makes so much sense. And the fact that they weren't trying to stop Rachel Zegler from saying that and stop Gal Gadot from saying those kinds of things, it's like, it says a lot. It's like, because it's like, you think they would, if they actually cared about the success of the movie and actually cared about the original story, you'd think that they would be a little bit, like the PR teams would be a little bit more careful of being like, you do not talk about X, Y, and Z. You can talk about A, B, and C, but do not talk about X, Y, and Z. Do not talk about how you think this is outdated. Like, even though we've talked about it on set, even though we've talked about it in production, you do not talk about it to the media. But it's like the fact that there was no, like, seemingly no walkthrough with the PR team to make sure they weren't saying stuff like that, and the fact that they said it and had to do damage control post those comments says a lot about how much the whole team behind that movie really did not truly care about the story at its core. Because if you think about Snow White and Cinderella and also Sleeping Beauty, their strengths were about being kind and being loving, no matter what your situation was. Their strengths were that they were kind, and they didn't need to be fierce and fighters. Like, we had Mulan, even though Mulan was later, we had Mulan for that. And then again later we had Tiana, and we had Merida. And even though I have issues with Elsa, we have Elsa. So it's like, we didn't need to be changing a core part of a character's identity, which was kindness. That was her strength. We didn't even be changing that about her just so we can fit the times. Because again, we have Merida, we have Elsa, we have Tiana, and we have Raya. Even though again, I also have some issues with Raya. And like, I think the live action Cinderella with Lloyd James, like, that one was peak. That was perfection with live action Disney. That was perfection, absolute perfection. And the live action Maleficent, even though that was more of like a spin-off live action rather than a true retelling, which was what we needed, I think. That was also perfect told, and again with Aurora and Cinderella in their respective live actions, we're not changing the integral parts of their characters. Both were incredibly kind, and that was their strength. Like, if you look at Maleficent 2, Mistress of Evil, like, I love that movie. Like, I have some issues with that movie, but like, I loved it. I do prefer the first movie, but the fact that we did expansion with like the Dark Fae, like, or like the Fae, like Maleficent's Fae kind, or are they Dark Fae? Is that what they're called? I don't remember, but they're so cool looking. Like, the fact that we got expansion with that in the second movie, and we got expansion with like the different kingdoms and kingdom dynamics and the Moors, like, that was so cool. And like, there's the one scene where Maleficent's losing her shit for good reason, And she tells Aurora, like, you don't know me, and Aurora says, you're my mother. She doesn't start some big fight with Moss, and she doesn't start some big argument to get Moss to stand down. She just says, you're my mother. And it's like, chef's kiss. That. And then with Cinderella, with Ella, near the end, when she's going to join the prince, when she's going to join Kit, like, and Lady Tremaine says, like, I'm her mother. And Ella's just like, she doesn't get argumentative, she doesn't yell. She just says, like, you've never been my mother, but I forgive you. It's like the forgiveness, it's the kindness. And that is something that the Disney team behind Snow White specifically forgot about Snow White. It was her kindness towards everyone underneath and everything. And it's like, the thing is she, like, her age is not necessarily set in stone. 14 was kind of like used as a reference with how she should probably look, but she's probably in the 14 to 18 range, and the prince is probably also in, like, maybe like the 16 to 18, 19 range. And like 30, like, no one got 30 from anything. But Cinderella, or not Cinderella, Snow White's probably in the 14 to 18 range. The prince is probably in the 16 to 19 range, like I mentioned. Snow White's a 14 range. And she's telling, like, even though they're dwarves, she's telling a 14-year-old, if we're going with like 14 to 18, she's telling 7 grown-ass men to go wash, or they won't go up and wash, or you won't get bite to eat. When I was in that age range, I wouldn't be able to tell 7 grown men to go wash up, or they won't be able to eat. I wouldn't be able to do that. So it's like, she's kind, but she has spunk to her. Like, she's like, you're not getting what to eat. Okay, like kind of like chuckling at Grumpy a few times, and then telling Dopey, like, oh, you only want more kiss on the forehead. You're not gonna kiss more on the forehead. She has character. So it's like, anyway. So, like, I think Lady Tremaine, and to an extent, going back to what I was saying, Lady Tremaine, to a lesser extent, Evil Queen, those would be better characters to make morally gray, because you can understand a little bit better why they were so cruel to their stepdaughters. Not that it's an excuse, but, like, if you made them more morally gray, it would be more understandable for their characters and their relations with their stepdaughters, with their respective stepdaughters. It makes more sense for them than it makes sense for Cruella to be a morally gray character. So that is all I'll say about this. And then I also wanted to talk about some of the stats, because I did my 1-month book buying ban. I also talked about this in my post book buying ban haul video or videos. I might break it up into 2 different hauls, just depending on how things go. Can't spell. But I wanted to talk about this here, because I did the 1-month book buying ban video so recently, and I'm not sure when I'll be able to do the book post buying ban book haul video or videos. I'm not quite sure when I'll be able to do that. But these are some book sets that I have. So in total, on my bookshelves, I have 183 books on my shelves. There's 5 over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here to this side. I have a little shelf for, like, my nightstand type of deal. And then I have these 3 which I own, which are on my bookshelf. And then I have my Middle Earth shelves, and then I have my main bookshelf. So I have 183 books in total. I have read 168 of those books, and then 15 are unread. So 92% are read, and 8% are unread, which is a very good ratio, I feel. And I think I'm pretty sure it's better than what it was at the start of my book buying ban, and what it was at before I started doing the World of the Dice Reading blog. This is much better. I didn't do the stats at the start of the World of the Dice Reading blog, series, but I did do it, like I mentioned at the start of the book buying ban video, and this is definitely much better than what it was then, which I like. So I have read 60 books in 2026, and even though these ones are will to be read, they're soon enough on in this stack. They're in this stack, and they're gonna be soon enough that I'm automatically counting them to what I've read. In my for 2026. Like I said, I'm currently reading What the River Knows, and also I have like 2 other books on my currently reading list. I have this, and then 2 other books. And then I'm also currently reading another book, a 4th book, but I put that one on pause for a little bit. So like it's gonna be a pretty quick catch up to get to where I'm at. So like currently where I'm at, not including these 4, is 56 books. But I'm including them, so it's 60 books. And probably by this point, when this video is up, I'll be close enough to 60 books that it's not going to be a huge deal. And like I said, it'll be a pretty quick catch up. So anyway, so for the point of the book stats, we're saying 60 books read in 2026, and 36 books were owned at the time of reading, so that's about 60%. 36 were owned at the time of reading, which I think is really good, and it's definitely higher than what it was. And when I say owned at the time of reading, or for the next one, it's 24 books that were unowned at the time of reading. And when I say at the time of reading, I might have either A, bought them since, or B, unhauled them since reading. But at the time, I either owned or did not own those books at the time I read them. Like a good example is Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill, I think her name. Yeah, Molly O'Neill. At the time that I read that and finished it, I was listening to that as an audiobook in the Libby app. And I then bought the book because I was loving it so much, but at the time that I was reading it, it was not owned. I did not own it when I read it. So, like, there's that. And then also, like, to look at the other one, Wild Dark Shore. I owned that at the time of reading it, but I have since unhauled it because that was like my lowest rated book of the year so far. So, anyway, that's what I mean by at the time of reading with the 60 books read in 2026. And then for the 24 unknown books at the time of reading, one was borrowed from a friend, and that one is the Pride and Premeditation book. That one was borrowed by a friend, and that's 4% of those books. And then the other 23 were borrowed from the library. So 96% of the books that were unowned at the time of reading were borrowed from the library. So those are my statistics. And then to talk to you about the books I'm currently reading, because again, I'm having this as like an overview video for the Roll of the Dice reading vlog. So, I'm currently reading What the River Knows by Isabel Ibañez, The Quarter Queen by Kayla Hardy, and I am borrowing this from the library. So, to give you the description, 1843, New Orleans. The reigning voodoo queen is Marie Laveau, feared by her enemies and followers alike. Her daughter, Marie Laveau, is Marie Laveau II, is everything her cutthroat and principled mother is not, spoiled and entitled, with a wickedly rebellious streak, and defies her mother at every turn. But Marie's world is turned upside down when she finds Marie comatose in the bayou, cursed by exiled voodoo king John the Conjurer, Marie's former teacher, lover, and greatest enemy. As Marie hovers on the brink of death, Marie races to uncover the secrets of her mother's life in search of a cure, and gradually uncovers a web of alliances, dangers, and deceptions. What's worse, Henrik Broussard, Marie's long missing childhood best friend, returns as a witch hunter at the church, tasked with investigating her. With so many enemies circling, including a puritanical-minded Brotherhood of Alchemists and the slave-holding mayor of the city, Marie must confront the past and face her mother's demons that have now become her own. or die trying. So so far, I'm loving that book. Let's see how far I am. I'm about 5% into it, and I'm loving it so far. I'm gonna be babysitting tonight, and then I'm gonna be sleeping over because it's for my boss's kids and some of his nephews, and then I'm gonna be sleeping over, and then popping over to work. So I'm gonna try to read some more of that tonight. But the last book that I'm currently reading is Where They Last Saw Her by Marcie R. Rendon, and I'm listening to this on an audiobook through Libby. So, all they heard was her scream. Quill has lived on the Work Pine Reservation in Minnesota her whole life. She knows what happens to women who look like her. Just a girl, when Jimmy Sky jumped off the railway bridge and she ran for help, Quinn realizes now that she has never stepped right. As she trains for the Boston Marathon early one morning out in the woods, she hears a scream. When she returns to search the area, all she finds are tire tracks, and a single beaded earring. Things are different now for Quinn. Things are different now for Quinn than when she was a lonely girl. Her friends Pug and Galen are two women who don't know what it means to quit. Are two women who don't know what it means to quit. Her loving husband, Crow, and their two beautiful children challenge her to be better every day. So when she hears a second woman has been stolen, she is determined to do something about it, starting with investigating the group of men working on the pipeline construction just north of their homes. As Quill closes in on the truth about the missing woman, someone else disappears. In her quest to find justice for all the women of the reservation, she is confronted with the hard truths of their home and the people who purport to serve them. When will she stop losing neighbors, friends, and family? As Quill puts everything on the line to make a difference, the novel asks searing questions about bystander culture, the reverberations of even one act of crime, and the long-lasting trauma of being considered invisible. And I started this for MMIW Week, Missing Northern Indigenous Women Week, along with another book that I had read for that week, which I'm blanking on the name of. The Bone Thief by Sid Walk by Vanessa Lilly. And honestly, we need to talk about this one. I'm not going to talk about it in this video just because that is for another video, which I can do 1000%. I will do. If you want that kind of video, comment on it. But those are the book sets, what I'm currently reading. Now to finally get into the overview of... I'm not going to have this be like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not going to have this be... Ooh, my mic's dying, one moment. Okay, got a new mic. But, like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not going to have this be a traditional vlog, it's just going to be like a one-shot video. But I wanted to talk about how I thought that the Roll of the Dice reading blog series went. Now, on the whole, I felt like it went really well, and I feel like the statistics are a really good sign of that, because the largest purpose for me for the Roll of the Dice reading vlog was that I get a lot of the books on my bookshelf read, or currently reading. And I know I still have like 3 books to finish from my bookshelf, and I have like another 15 books, I think it was, on my shelf that are unread. But honestly, like, I did like this for the purpose of what this series was. I think it worked really well and it was successful. The only problem with this, the only real problem, caveat with this, is that it only really works if there are at least, at the very, very, very least minimum, 3 books, which I could do another video under this series, because I think, like I said, I have like about 15 other books that I could do for it. But like, so yeah, I could do like one more video under this and call it a day to get all of my books read. It's just, like I said, the only real caveat is like once you start getting under 10, then that's when it becomes a little bit not harder, but it becomes a little bit more obvious. Like you roll the dice, even if you're using one die, like once you get into once you get to 10 and under, and you get like with 10 you have multiples of 2 and 5. It's a multiple of 2 and 5, so it'd either be 5 2s or 2 5s. And then you have it in a stack of like 10, let's say. You know that like an even number would land on like 2 4 6 8 and 10. An odd number would land on 1 3 5 and 9. 1 3 5 7 and 9, excuse me. And you know that it's 1 through 10, and so like 1 through 5 is half. So you know that if it's between 1 and 5, it's the first half, and between 6 and 10, it's the second half. And once you start getting under that, like if you get to 9, it's a multiple of 3. So it's like you get to there, and then 8, multiple of 4, 7. That's when it's a little bit trickier. But like if you have like, let's say you roll the dice and you're using 2 dice and you get 21, you know that's like 3 sets of 7, so you know that you'll land on the 7th book in the stack, even though you've done 21. It's 3 sets of 7. That's where like the multiple and like the obviousness of it comes in, because it's like you'll get like where it's like once it's under 10, and even like 15, like I have 15 books, that's a multiple of 5 and 3. So if I were to land on like, let's say I land on like 5, I would know which one that book is, depending on how I've stacked it and how I'm counting it. Or like you can also multiply 15. So like again, if you're using 2 dice and you land on 25, you know just to count the first 15, and then it's an additional 10, so you'll land on the 10th book in the stack. If you land on 30, if you land on like 30, 45, 60, you'll know it's the last book in the stack. So it's kind of like, it's the predictability, the obviousness of it, the predictability of it once you get under 10. Especially, it becomes more obvious once you're under 10. And I would, like, it's kind of obvious after a certain point when you have the same books, and then what I was trying to do with the series was I was trying to keep the stack in the same way. I know, like, with my first video and a little bit with the second video that I did for the series, I was like, or maybe it was more so the first video at the beginning, I was kind of like shuffling stuff around because I was trying to include books in the stack that I had forgotten about previously. So it was like, but once you have like a set way that you're stacking the books and then counting them, it does become predictable no matter how many books you have in the stack. And you kind of start to realize, like, you have it stacked, and then you roll the dice and you're like, okay, I know what book it's going to be. So it's like, or you keep the books on your shelves and you just count the, like, okay, so my books, the way I organize them on my shelves is I don't separate between read and unread, just because, like, I've never really had the best proportions when it came to unread. Unread was always significantly lower for me. It's always been significantly lower than my read books. So, like, it wouldn't make too much sense for me to, and with only having one bookshelf, I have my middle shelf. I have some books over here, but the bookshelf that I have here, it's a 2-1, and this one is more like hobby stuff. So I have like a crochet section, I have my puzzle books, my bigger puzzle books, and then I have my cut books. And then I have a couple of art books. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 art books here, and then one of the books is about the Tutankhamun exhibit a couple of years ago. But that's besides the point. So, like, I have my main bookshelf, and yes, I have my Lord of the Rings section, but, like, that bookshelf is the bookshelf that I have my Lord of the Rings middle section in, Tolkien section. That bookshelf is not super conducive to having books on it. It's more of a trinket shelf. Like, I made it work for the books, and I made it work for my Middle Earth Tolkien stuff, but it's like, it's not the most conducive thing for books. it's not the most conducive shelf for books. So the main bookshelf that makes the most sense for me is for the books is the bookshelf, is my main bookshelf. And with that, because of space, and usually when you're organizing, I'm on a little bit of a tangent here, but that's what I usually do, and you know it is what it is. But with organizing your books unread versus read, there's the assumption that once you read it, it goes, and then you so you have your books organized unread versus read, and then you have them organized more than that, so in their individual sections. And unread, maybe you organize them by author, and then in the read section you organize them by like genre or whatever, or maybe both sections are organized by genre and then author, or however you do it. But there's the assumption that once you read the book, then it goes to the read section. And when you have a singular bookshelf, like I don't have a TBR cart. I do not have like an unread TBR cart. And for me, it's largely, even more so now, but for me, it's largely because of space. And again, like I mentioned, my unread to read proportions are like I said, the amount of unread books has always been significantly lower than the books I have read. And sometimes that number increases, but it's never reached above, the percentage of books that are unread has never reached above 40%. And like I don't have exact math for that, but based on how my reading habits are, the amount of unread books, like I mentioned, has never reached above 40%. So for me, it would not make sense to have a TBR cart, and it also just, it wouldn't make sense due to that percentage for me to have a TBR cart, and it just, like I said, it wouldn't make sense for me spatially, based on the space that I have, to have a TBR cart. So, and like the thing with me, the way I like organizing my books, like TBR cart aside, is I like knowing exactly where my books are on the bookshelf, because I have only used the singular bookshelf almost my entire life. So like I am used to looking to the singular bookshelf for my books, and I have my Middle Earth section now, but I've always had a Middle Earth section. So it's like, which before I got that bookshelf where my Middle Earth shelves are now, where my Middle Earth books are now. The Middle Earth books were always on the top shelf, so I knew to look between, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves. I knew to look between the second and fifth shelves for any other books. And it's like, I like knowing where books are on my bookshelves. And once I organize something, I need to have that book there. And I know that if I were to have like a currently reading section, I would need to know where exactly that book is going in my read section once I read it. And it's like, I don't like, there's a part of my brain where it's like, I love reorganizing my bookshelf, but I do not want to have to do any more organizing than I have to do. So it's like organizing by your read versus unread. Like I've shared on my channel before, I now have the top 2 shelves are now dedicated to manga, manhwa, and graphic novels. So it's like I have those 2 shelves, and I do not want to separate those shelves because I do not want to separate those books because I have them organized in a very specific way. Basically, kind of how like Barnes & Noble organizes theirs, kind of. Or it's like it's organized by the title of the series rather than the author. Like I've organized it by height and then title. So, but I do not want to separate those books. And thankfully most of them are read, but so like they could still all technically be together. But like with all of my other books, it's like I would like, ideally if I were to do this, I would organize it with read at the very start, or not read, unread at the very start. And it's like, it would be one specific section of like the one shelf, and then I would continue from there. Wherever it ends on the shelf, the unread section, I would continue from there. But then it's like, I would have to, like, I think I have, right now I have my books organized by height. For the most part, they're organized by height. And it's like, I would have to, and I have all my book of the month books together, so it's like, if I'm doing a read versus unread, it's like, I talked about this, I actually talked about it in my, I organized my books by color video, my book of the month books. But it's like, with the way I kind of view it is like, partly like, I need to know exactly where that book will go, but it's like, looking at like my book of the month books, it's like, I like having all those together. So I would start overthinking it, like, okay, like, each shelf would have an unread section, so it would be like one side of my bookshelves on each shelf would be unread, and it's like, okay, then I would have to shuffle it over. And I was kind of doing that with my book of the month books, with like the unread books, which I do think helped, but like, I like, that's the only way where it would really work for me, because all of the book of the month books are all basically the same height, whereas with my other books, it would just start annoying me. Unless I'm organizing my books by alphabetical order, last name, like, it would just annoy me too much. But to have it, like, I kind of have my books as a mix of height and alphabetical order, kind of. Like, any series or any books by the same author, I tried to keep as close together as possible, so I knew where to look for that author. So it's like a mix of height and alphabetical order. But like, I would just get too annoyed, because it's like, if you have like a really short book next to a really tall book, and those are the only two unread books on the shelf, then that would bother me. So it's like, and then like, or if you were to color by rainbow, which I totally respect, but like, if I were to color code my books by the rainbow color, then it's like, I could have like a red book and then a blue book together, and then it would immediately go back to red starting off the rainbow, and it's like, that would annoy me too much. So it's like, I would start overthinking it. I'm overthinking it now. So it's like, for me, what works best is, so the reason why I had that tangent is because, like, if you were to have like a section of unread books on your shelf, where it was like a small section on each shelf, or one shelf dedicated to unread books, then that's where it's like, you could roll the dice and then just count out the books on your bookshelf that are unread. Or like, if you're like me and you just mix unread and read together based on how you organize, you'd be like bouncing back and forth between the shelves, which totally fine. But either way, no matter how this would work out, to roll the dice and then count it out, whether you pull out the books, stack them, or you have an unread section or a TBR cart, or you just count them on the shelves, again, there's like, the predictability argument still stands. So that for me is like the main thing, where it's like, it gets predictable after a while. And like, it also gets to a point where it's like, I really felt this at the end of each of the videos, where I would like, I enjoyed doing this and I had a good time with this series, but it was getting to a point where I was just like, I just want to be done with it. Which is why with the Book of the Month edition video, I just kind of wrapped it up, and I was like, I'm going to do an overview video where I'm going to talk about it. I'm not actually going to talk about my thoughts on these books in this video, just for time's sake, and so that I can just get this video up. Excuse me. Because I think I talked about it in the Book of the Month edition of the Roll of the Dice reading vlog. But another part of why I was trying to wrap it up is because the individual clips take up space, especially when they get to like 10 plus minutes long. And then adding them into iMovie, that takes up space, because then it's like, you're adding a 5-minute clip, a 10-minute clip, a 15-minute clip, and then maybe like a 2-minute clip. So you're getting into like 20-30 minutes of a somewhat edited video. So it's like, and this, I think I had like a 10-15 minute, I already had like a 10 or so minutes clip and then I had to stop because I had to step away, and this clip is now at like 48 minutes, so we're pushing an hour with this. Which is fun. I'm trying to have like some more longer form content and see how that works. But it's like the clips take up space, putting them into the iMovie, and the projects in iMovie take up space. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, part of it is like, okay, I just want to get it done. Part of it is like, okay, I don't want to take too much more space up on my phone, because I do have to do a lot of this on my phone now, and my computer's acting weird now, so I can't transfer it over to my computer. Like, I can't save and share the video and airdrop it to my computer like I used to do. Like, I have to upload it to YouTube through my phone, which totally fine, I can do that, and I'm getting used to that. But it's like, it takes up space and I can't delete any of the clips and delete the iMovie project until it is fully uploaded on YouTube, just because if something happens, I don't want to lose the clip. Like, I don't want to lose what I've done until it is like 90% uploaded to YouTube. So it's like, and with doing it on my phone now, I just want to ensure that like I don't lose anything. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this. I had a really good time with the Roll of the Dice reading vlog videos. Again, even though I have like 15 other books to read roughly on my shelves, I don't think I'm going to do another one of these videos. Just because, like, it takes a lot of time and effort, and I am trying to, like, I do think I've been doing better about updating mid-reading, even though for the Roll of the Dice reading vlogs, because they were kind of pushing and I was trying to cover a lot of books, and they were getting close to or going over an hour, like, I wasn't doing it as much, because partly to save time, and partly to get it over with, and also, like, I kind of knew these videos would be longer, so I was just trying to be like, okay, I'm going to update it at the end of the book once I finish. But so far, I think with other reading vlogs, I have been doing better about updating while I'm reading the book. So, overall, like I mentioned, this video series was a success, and if I get more books in the long run, and what I liked about this, too, is I liked being able to separate it out, even though the first two parts weren't separated out really based on genre or whatever, or book types. The fact that I was able to do like a book of the month section, or like a book of the month edition, book of the month version, like I could do like a hardcover version or a paperback version, or like historical fiction. I could do it based off of genres, but like I would need to have a few more books to do so. So I don't think I'm going to do another one of these videos for a while. But if I do, you will know. So that is the end of this video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.